Hello, welcome to this presentation on the topic of the Hungerless games, the strategy called the Hungerless games, and this builds on top of the video "Welcome to ICCI" video. So in that video, I talked about the overall. I began to talk about the vastly complex topic of how collective intelligence would go about, solving, I'll just use the word simplistically, solving all the world's problems holistically. And so as part of that, I talked about one example of a solution, the program called community cafes. And so the community cafes, the goal there is to build and operate community cafes all around the world, wherever they're needed, to permanently eradicate world hunger. And they have multiple other benefits and consequences as well, as we talked about. And but I want to talk about the Hungerless Games strategy, which has a symbiotic relationship with the community cafe program. In fact, the Hungerless Game strategy is largely built around the community cafe program, but the community cafe program itself depends upon the larger Hungerless Game strategy for financing, among many other things. And so how does that work? Well, the Hungerless Game strategy as a whole, one of the benefits of it is it can be understood at multiple levels. So just by saying two words, Hungerless Games, you already get that it's about ending hunger. No big surprise there. Okay, great. That's a huge advantage. If you dig a little deeper, it's like, well, the Hungerless Games is about ending hunger through massive deployment of these community cafes with their close ties to regenerative agricultural networks and all these other benefits that make it a holistically net beneficial thing in many, many degrees. And so that's to do that, to deploy community cafes in the numbers needed to permanently eradicate world hunger. We're talking about an annual budget on the order of tens of billions of dollars per year to make that happen. Call it $50 billion per year, just to give it a round number. It could be $100 billion for all I know. And it also depends on how quickly we want to do the build out. We want to do it as quickly as possible. In fact, for the community cafes, we're imagining, we're not quite in the planning stages yet, but we're envisioning these automobile assembly line, like, very long, mile long or multiple mile long operations where community cafes and all the equipment needed to operate a community cafe are assembled and in many cases built into, say, a 40-foot shipping container that then can be shipped anywhere in the world, unpacked, opened up, and assembled into a fully functional community cafe. And then you have the supply lines feeding that community cafe with the raw materials, with foods and other vital inputs. Now, all of that, let's just, rough numbers, let's say that all ends up gobbling up a budget of somewhere between $50 and $100 billion per year. Where would we come up with that funding? Well, the Hungerless Games strategy has a major pillar, which is the transformation of the global economy from an economy of hoarding, which is what it is now in aggregate, to what we call an economy of sharing. And we talk about this on the Hungerless Games video, the 5-minute video. And the way that that's actually implemented is through a standard called CCC, which stands for Certified Compassionate Company. All certified compassionate companies donate 100% of their profits to the permanent eradication of world hunger, funding programs such as community cafes. And it's a model very, very similar, in fact, partly modeled after Newman's own, a very successful, profitable, thriving, multi-hundred-million-dollar business, excuse me, which donates all of its profits to charity. So it absolutely can be done, has been done, is being done, and we're simply going to take that portion of the concept and build it into a global standard called CCC, Certified Compassionate Companies, which donate all of their profits to permanently eradicating world hunger as long as there is hunger in the world. There will come a point where the growth of the compassionate economy will surpass the point where all of its profits are needed to end world hunger. And yes, let's say 50 billion per year is needed to maintain that state of hungerlessness. Any surplus profits beyond that would then be able to go to other things. And there are many other things that could go to. That's a whole other topic unto itself. With the Hungerless Games, what we have is a way to kickstart this whole process. And the way that we kickstart it on the economic side is through Sato Hemp, which is the first company applying for certification as a CCC, Certified Compassionate Company. Regardless of what stage it's at in that process, 100% of its profits go to the permanent eradication of world hunger. So we're going to start a really nice dialectic between Sato Hemp and the compassionate economy, CCC, on the economic side, and the community cafes on the ending world hunger side, and all of the multiple beneficial impacts that has on multiple issues and multiple needs of the planet and people. So the Hungerless Games strategy calls for kickstarting this economic engine, let's just call it the CCC, or compassionate economy economic engine, and kickstarting the eradication of hunger. Both of these are gonna the natural symbiotic relationship between these two and the media coverage that's going to be inevitable. Both traditional media, and we're also launching. We're going to be launching a weekly documentary television series called "The Hemperor's New Clothes." Why the Hemperor's New Clothes? Well, Takuya Sato, the head of Sato Hemp, he is the Hemperor of Japan. So the documentary television series, The Hemperor's New Clothes, will document the pioneering of the compassionate economy and the pioneering and implementation at increasing, scale of the community cafes all around the world and all of their multiple positive impacts. All of this is going to become a huge story. Unless a bigger positive story comes along and bring it. I mean, the whole point of Radish, which incubates such strategies as the Hungerless Games, is to provide a space for such strategies to be discussed and refined and kicked around, and it was Radish Collective Intelligence, or Radish CI, uses collective intelligence to incubate these strategies and platforms and programs and all manner of solutions. And so other strategies that are proposed are absolutely welcome. It's not like anyone's wedded to the Hungerless Games, but for the time being, it's definitely our racehorse in terms of strategy. Why? Because it is just so absolutely compelling. I was talking briefly about how there's different levels. You can look at it just from the high level and say, oh yeah, it's just about ending hunger. You look a little deeper, it's about initiating a global economic transformation and knocking over the first domino among major world problems, that being hunger. And then, once hunger is eradicated, I mean, can you imagine the impact on the psyche of humanity? It's like, wait a second, there's no more hunger. Everyone's taking, well, how's that? And then, then they'll look and see or hear the stories, see the stories, and start crying, and everyone will just be hugging each other. And that will have incredible impacts, and it won't just be all at once. I mean, it'll be the whole pathway towards ending hunger. will just be an amazing journey that'll just build momentum and build momentum until, a critical mass of people say, oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. Did we have to wait until somebody invented a game, the Hungerless Games, to actually make sure that people are fed? And then they'll think of the Hunger Games, the movie, and it's like, wait a second. We are the barbaric people in the capital who are just so focused on our looks and our ego and everything else, and we're letting people starve. So the Hungerless Games itself will probably just be this catalyst that'll drive just massive demand for CCC products and services, and just massive, demand for just abilities to donate and contribute to this generally, because people are finally going to wake up to the fact that we don't have to have hunger in the world. So that's going to unify humanity. It's going to just get CCC to take off like a rocket ship. Because by then people will have dug into the deeper story of CCC and what it means to have a compassionate economy. It's not only looking out to end hunger, it's looking out for all the needs of humanity and all the needs of the planet. And it attends to those needs in fundamentally two ways. Number one, sending all of its profits to, wherever they're needed the most, or wherever the strategy dictates that they will have the most holistic, overall, long-term, short-term, and long-term impact. But secondly, and no less important, is that the CCC standard means that in addition to sending all your profits to, ending hunger and then thereafter solving other world problems, in addition to that, everything you do, every decision you make must be driven by an overall overarching aim, which is in support of the overarching aim of the entire collective intelligence, which is a whole world, a world that is whole. We call that aim in Greek, that aim or end is telos, and that becomes the top of a teleological taxonomy. So every single topic in the entire taxonomy is ultimately pointing towards that true north of a whole world, a world that works, a world that's sustainable, peaceful, harmonious, etc. So a CCC company that's certified compassionate, everything that it does must be aligned and pointing towards that telos, that aim of a whole world. And so we break that down simplistically into its two main kind of sub-branches of the teleological taxonomy, which are people and planet. A whole world for the world to be whole. People need to be well. Planet needs to be well. So the Hungerless Games kicks off this virtuous cycle, which then grows well beyond its original mandate, which was to permanently eradicate hunger. And it just accelerates this transformation of the economy to a compassionate economy, or toward a compassionate economy. There will always be holdouts, but it's the consumer who determines market share, not the corporation, not the government. And the consumers are increasingly going to want to buy compassionate and put compassion in fashion. So the Hungerless Games and all these details that we've been talking about constitute a really significant part of the marketplace solutions that I talk about in the 5-minute Hungerless Games video, the marketplace solutions to market-based problems. So the Hungerless Games is a big high-level strategy for getting this whole global transformation started. And it also has a beautiful virtuous cycle with collective intelligence itself. What is that? So as the big story of the Hungerless Games builds and all that, and interviews are done of the principals, and they'll refer back to collective intelligence and how that, that has really, pushed them forward, pushed the Hungerless Games, pushed the community cafes and the Hungerless Games as a strategy forward. As that story builds, more and more people will be curious about, well, what is this? What is this collective intelligence thing? And more people will join one of the many different collective intelligence communities that'll be out there. And then, of course, what really needs to happen is a convergence of these communities into one, just global collective intelligence that is aligned with the same overarching telos, which is a whole world. So it all works together very, very well. And the fact that we're launching the Hungerless Games and actually starting to implement actual programs and platforms of the Hungerless Games in the real world, platforms like CCC, programs like Community Cafe, means that it is a real player in this space that was otherwise essentially vacant, because there really was no strategy for either to end hunger or solve any of the other world problems. And so the fact that it is the first kind of grand strategy, global strategy to initiate global transformation across ultimately all the world's problems, being first gives it a very, very special place in the realm of marketing. And I refer to the outstanding book, The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, what Newton's laws were to physics for many decades. The 22 immutable laws of marketing are to marketing to this day. So I could go on and on about that and other aspects, but I'm gonna spare you for now. But thank you so much for watching, and please stay tuned. We'll be publishing quite a bit more. Thank you.